sharing a roof with your parents was once as common as apple pie, largely due to the scarcity of suitable housing in decades past. Back then, multi-generational households seemed to hum along like a well-oiled machine. However, fast forward to the sprawling houses of today, and cohabitation can morph into a recipe for domestic disaster. Mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law, in particular, can find themselves locked in a never-ending game of passive-aggressive chess. It seems counterintuitive, right? More square footage, more problems? The truth is that both sides yearn for autonomy. Loving parents don't want to be a burden or stifle their children's independence, and grown-up kids crave the privacy to navigate their lives as couples. It's a delicate dance. Even the purest intentions can spark arguments, or worse, full-blown family feuds. Perhaps the key lies in exploring alternative living arrangements that foster closeness while respecting everyone's need for space. In this heart-wrenching tale, we encounter the story of Aunt Mei, a 58-year-old woman who faced the unimaginable. After suffering a debilitating stroke last year, Aunt Mei was left behind in a rural home by her son and daughter-in-law, who refused to care for her. Despite their abandonment, they still demanded that her husband, Uncle Jung, move to the city to look after their child. With only one son, Aunt Mei and Uncle Jung were left feeling powerless and betrayed by their only child. They had always dreamed of a harmonious family life, envisioning their twilight years spent surrounded by loving grandchildren and the comfort of a close-knit family. But reality struck hard and cruelly, shattering their dreams and leaving them in a state of despair and helplessness. This unfortunate situation is rooted in years of excessive pampering and indulgence. Since his birth, Aunt Mei's son, Wei, was treated like a precious gem, a tradition in the Jung family, where there has always been just one male heir per generation. As Wei grew up, Aunt Mei and Uncle Jung doted on him, never denying him anything. Every whim was catered to, every demand met, creating an environment where Wei never learned the value of compromise or respect for others. Wei eventually married Lin, a young woman from a nearby village, through an arranged introduction. After marriage, Wei became completely submissive to Lin, unable to assert his own will. In modern times, this kind of deference to one's spouse is often seen as essential for family harmony. However, in Wei's case, it led to a situation where he lost his voice entirely, and his parents' well-being was sacrificed at the altar of his marital harmony. The trouble began shortly after Wei's marriage. Lin complained incessantly about their small house and demanded that the family split. Despite the countryside home being a spacious two-story house, over 200 square meters, Lin insisted it was inadequate and pressured Aunt Mei and Uncle Jung to move out. The house, which once echoed with laughter and family gatherings, now seemed empty and silent as Lin's demands grew louder. Although Aunt Mei had mentally prepared for this eventuality, she was taken aback by how quickly they were forced out. With no other option, Aunt Mei initially moved in with her own mother-in-law until their new home was built. This transition was not easy, as living with her mother-in-law brought its own set of challenges and adjustments. Just as Aunt Mei and Uncle Jung began to settle into their new house, Lin started making more demands, shattering any sense of stability they had begun to feel. When Lin gave birth to their first child, she insisted that Aunt Mei and Uncle Jang buy an apartment in the city to ensure a better education for their grandchild. This demand was a heavy blow, as purchasing a city apartment would cost hundreds of thousands of yuan, draining their life savings. The city, with its bright lights and promises of better opportunities, became a symbol of their sacrifice. Faced with the threat of divorce from their son and daughter-in-law, Aunt Mei and Uncle Zheng borrowed money to buy the apartment. They turned to friends and family, swallowing their pride as they pleaded for financial help. However, once Wei and his family moved into the new place, the demands didn't cease. The apartment, meant to be a beacon of hope for the future, became a battleground of endless requests and unreasonable expectations. Lin soon pressured Aunt Mei to move to the city to look after their grandchild, despite Aunt Mei's desire to enjoy the peace of their newly built rural home. The tranquility they had hoped for was replaced with the chaos of city life and the constant strain of familial obligations. Reluctantly, Aunt Mei and Uncle Zheng packed up and moved to the city. The transition was difficult. They left behind not just a house, but a lifetime of memories and a community that had been their support system. Initially, Aunt Mei found comfort in her daily chores of cooking and cleaning. These tasks, though mundane, provided her with a sense of purpose and normalcy. However, Lin's criticism soon began, with complaints about the cleaning not being up to her standards. Wei, though aware of his wife's unjust behavior, didn't dare to confront her, and instead joined in the criticism. Aunt Mei confided in Uncle Zheng about her feelings of injustice, but they felt powerless to change their situation. The weight of their son's passivity and their daughter-in-law's hostility became a constant burden. The breaking point came when Aunt Mei discovered that Lin had given away local specialties she had brought from home. These items were more than just food. They were a tangible connection to her roots, a piece of her identity. When she confronted Lin, a violent argument ensued, resulting in physical abuse. The shock and pain of being hit by her daughter-in-law were compounded by Wei's response. Too fearful to stand up to his wife, he advised his mother to endure it. This time, Aunt Mei couldn't bear the mistreatment any longer and returned to her rural home. But the ordeal was far from over. Lin threatened divorce again, compelling Aunt Mei to return to the city for the sake of Wei's marriage. The cycle of abuse and submission continued, with Aunt Mei and Uncle Zheng caught in its relentless grip. During her years in the city, Aunt Mei endured numerous grievances, mostly due to Lin's hostility. Her spirit, once vibrant and resilient, was slowly worn down by the constant emotional and physical strain. After being diagnosed with a stroke, Aunt Mei finally returned to her rural home, where she found mental relief away from her tormentors. The familiar surroundings, the quiet rhythms of rural life, and the support of old friends and neighbors provided a semblance of peace. With her health deteriorating, she relied on Uncle Zheng for care. He became her rock, tending to her needs with unwavering devotion. Meanwhile, Wei considered it a blessing that he wasn't causing any further trouble. If Lin had treated Aunt Mei and Uncle Zheng with the same respect and care she showed her own parents, things might have turned out differently. But perhaps this was Aunt Mei's fate, a consequence of years of indulgence and misplaced priorities. The story of Aunt Mei serves as a poignant reminder of the complexities and challenges of family dynamics across generations, illustrating the delicate balance between love, duty, and self-preservation. The generational gap between the elderly and the young often leads to misunderstandings. Changes in lifestyle, from diet to technology, create a divide that can be hard for the elderly to bridge. What once was considered a treat or a luxury might now be seen as commonplace. And what was once a straightforward way of life now seems archaic and cumbersome. Relationships between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law are notoriously complicated, often leading to household tension. These relationships, fraught with expectations and unspoken rules, can become battlegrounds where every word and action is scrutinized. Living together under one roof can exacerbate these issues, leading to inevitable conflicts. The story of Aunt Mei serves as a poignant reminder of the complexities and challenges of family dynamics across generations, illustrating how easily love can turn into resentment when mutual respect is lacking. It underscores the importance of understanding and compassion in maintaining family harmony and the devastating consequences when these elements are missing. The reasons for separation in families often stem from generational differences and evolving lifestyles. As times change, so do habits, and this is starkly evident even in something as fundamental as eating. Reflect on the meals of your youth, simple, traditional fare that brought comfort and familiarity. Now, compare it to the diverse and often health-conscious diets of today. The contrast is striking, isn't it? This shift in dietary habits is just one example of the many changes in our daily lives, encompassing fashion, housing, transportation, and communication. While the younger generation adapts swiftly to these transformations, the elderly often find it challenging to keep pace. Additionally, the dynamics between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law are notoriously fraught with tension. As an old saying goes, "You have your reasons, and I have mine." Even a wise judge can't resolve family disputes. These complex relationships, characterized by different expectations and misunderstandings, become even more strained when families live under the same roof. When generations share a home, the close quarters and constant interaction can lead to friction. Scenes of stubborn mothers-in-law clashing with strong-willed daughters-in-law, or kind-hearted elders feeling mistreated by younger family members, are all too common. The proximity magnifies every minor issue, turning small disagreements into significant conflicts. Therefore, the intricate nature of family relationships often leads to inevitable discord when elderly parents and their adult children cohabit. The blending of old and new values, coupled with the pressures of daily life, creates a breeding ground for misunderstandings and disagreements. These family complexities underscore the challenges of maintaining harmony in multi-generational households, highlighting the need for mutual respect and understanding. Grandpa Lee, now 75 years old, looked back on his life with a mixture of nostalgia and wisdom. "I have 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter," he began. "In those days, having many children was considered a blessing. With 3 sons, I was highly respected in the village. People would defer to me, and I never had to worry about my old age support. I believed my children would look after me in my twilight years. My wife and I always gave our children the best of everything. We worked tirelessly from dawn until dusk, sacrificing our comforts and dreams to secure their futures, hoping they would repay our efforts by taking good care of us when we grew old." As Grandpa Lee's children grew, so did the demands of raising them. When his 3 sons reached marriageable age, he and his wife spared no expense to ensure their weddings were grand and impressive. "We spent all our savings and even went into debt to give our sons the best weddings," he recounted. "I continued toiling on construction sites day in and day out without complaint, focused on repaying the debt. I never dared to grumble because I felt it was my duty to provide for my sons and ensure their happiness. However, the situation was different for his daughter. When she got married, Grandpa Lee didn't provide her with any financial support. Instead, he demanded a hefty bride price of 500,000 yuan from her husband. "I didn't see it as favoritism," he explained. "I felt entitled to the money, believing that raising my daughter only to give her away deserved some compensation. But this decision strained my relationship with my son-in-law, who never visited us after the marriage." Reflecting on his past beliefs, Grandpa Lee admitted, "Back then, I never thought of relying on my daughter for support. I was confident that my sons would care for me in my old age, so I focused all my attention on them. I treated them well, always putting their needs first, believing they would support me later in life. But as time passed, reality proved to be different." The turning point came when Grandpa Lee's wife fell seriously ill and eventually passed away. With her gone, he began to see the true nature of his son's support. "As I grew older, I realized my sons were not as reliable as I had thought. They were busy with their own lives, and their promises of care and support gradually faded. My daughter, on the other hand, turned out to be the most filial. She would have welcomed me into her home, but the tension with her husband made it difficult. Not wanting to be a source of conflict, I chose to return to my rural home." Back in his rural home, Grandpa Lee found a sense of peace and freedom. "I lived independently, relying on my own abilities," he said. "Although my living conditions were poor, my mind was at peace. I realized that elderly parents shouldn't live with their children if it brings unhappiness. It's better to live independently and maintain a sense of dignity and peace." Grandpa Lee shared the valuable lessons he had learned over the years. Parents should not always satisfy their children's desires, he advised. Some parents feel compelled to give their children everything they want, thinking it will make them happy. But such indulgence is harmful. When children receive things too easily, they don't learn to appreciate their value. Only through hard work and effort can children understand the worth of what they have. When they realize that money and possessions don't come easily, they will cherish them more and be more understanding of their parents' hard work. He continued, "Raising a filial child requires teaching them the importance of effort, gratitude, and responsibility. If we constantly give them everything, they may grow up to be ungrateful, taking our sacrifices for granted. This will be the most heartbreaking outcome for us. We must instill in our children the values of hard work and appreciation, ensuring they will be responsible and caring in the future. It's not just about giving them material things. It's about shaping their character and teaching them to value and respect the efforts of others." In his final reflection, Grandpa Lee emphasized the importance of balance in parenting. "We must find a balance between providing for our children and teaching them to be independent and responsible," he said. "It's a delicate task, but it's essential for their growth and our peace of mind in old age. The greatest legacy we can leave them is not wealth, but the values and lessons that will guide them through life. It's essential to treat all children fairly when they are young, providing each with equal love, attention, and resources. This issue has sparked significant online debate, leading to two contrasting perspectives on whether parents should disclose their financial details to their children as they age. One camp strongly believes that parents should be transparent with their children about their finances. They argue that the elderly are often forgetful and vulnerable to deception, making it risky for them to manage large sums of money independently. By informing their children about their financial situation, parents can ensure their money is managed wisely and protected from potential scams. Supporters of this view feel that transparency can foster trust and mutual understanding within the family, helping children to step in and manage finances effectively when necessary. On the other hand, a contrasting viewpoint suggests that parents should keep their financial details private. Those who oppose disclosing financial information fear that if children know the extent of their parents' wealth, they might develop a sense of entitlement and continuously ask for money. This could lead to dependency, strain family relationships, and place unnecessary pressure on elderly parents. Advocates of this perspective believe that keeping financial matters private can maintain boundaries and encourage children to become self-reliant and financially responsible. Both sides present compelling arguments, highlighting the complexity of this issue. The decision to share or withhold financial information requires careful consideration of family dynamics, the individual characteristics of the children, and the overall financial situation. Regardless of the approach, one key principle remains: elderly parents must prioritize their own financial security. Before considering any monetary gifts to their children, they should ensure they have enough savings to meet their own needs, including healthcare, living expenses, and any unforeseen emergencies. In navigating this delicate balance, parents must exercise wisdom and foresight. They should consider having open, honest conversations with their children about the importance of financial independence and responsibility. Additionally, seeking advice from financial advisors or legal professionals can help in making informed decisions that protect both the parents' interests and foster healthy family relationships. Ultimately, the goal is to create a supportive environment where children respect their parents' boundaries and understand the value of financial prudence. By treating all children fairly and making wise financial decisions, parents can ensure their well-being and cultivate a legacy of respect and responsibility within the family. Auntie Wang, despite her loneliness, had always been self-sufficient. To ensure her children had prosperous lives, she emptied her life savings. She gave her daughter a dowry of over 100,000 yuan and used the rest for her son's down payment on a house in the city. She prided herself on treating her children equally, never favoring one over the other. However, she kept no savings for herself, leaving her vulnerable. One fateful day, Auntie Wang noticed her usually nimble legs had become stiff and unresponsive. Concerned, she went to the hospital, where she was diagnosed with a serious illness. Fearing the medical expenses, she called her daughter for help. Reluctantly, her daughter transferred 1,000 yuan and told her to handle the hospital visit on her own. When Auntie Wang expressed concern that the amount might not be enough, her daughter curtly suggested, "Ask your son for money. Didn't you give all your money to him?" And then hung up. Heartbroken, Auntie Wang reflected on how she had financially supported her son, even helping with his mortgage payments. Yet her son had become reckless with money, showing no gratitude or concern for her well-being. She had even bought him a car, but he remained indifferent and cold toward her. This painful realization dawned on Auntie Wang. Giving all her savings to her children had been a grave mistake. In a community chat, Xiaolu shared a similar story to caution others. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, lost her husband early and had a son and a daughter who both worked in the city. Mrs. Chen lived alone in the countryside. Her children visited occasionally, but not frequently, after a lifetime of hard work and diligent saving. Mrs. Chen gave her son most of her savings for a house down payment and provided a substantial dowry for her daughter's wedding. Despite her generosity, her son and daughter-in-law showed little gratitude, and her son often remarked, "Didn't you earn all that money for me?" During Mrs. Chen's surgery, her daughter stayed by her side, while her son and daughter-in-law used busyness as an excuse to avoid visiting. The distribution of savings among elderly parents significantly impacts family relationships. An elderly person at home is like a treasure, bringing harmony and happiness to the family. However, modern young people often prioritize freedom and individual lifestyles, leading to inevitable differences in opinions with the elderly. Proper distribution of savings can satisfy everyone, while improper distribution can disrupt family harmony. The allocation of savings can also influence who will care for the parents if they fall ill. In families with multiple children, there's often an unspoken awareness of who receives the savings and who is responsible for the parents' care. Caring for elderly parents is a shared responsibility, and when they are ill, they need companionship. Sometimes, the distribution of savings has a greater impact on family dynamics than the financial support itself. It's natural for parents to rely on their children, regardless of gender, for old age support, especially in single-child families. Elderly care should be based on the actual situation of each family. Smart elderly individuals often save their money as a retirement fund, which can earn interest and be distributed through a will based on the level of care each child provides. However, withholding money when children need it can seem heartless. While elderly parents have their preferences for distributing their savings, fairness is always the best approach. Thank you for watching today's sharing. Don't forget to subscribe and share this channel, where you will always find companionship and wisdom.